Hey there artists, this is Wallet here. I'm dropping in here quickly to give you a great little art lesson while you're waiting for the cinematic design course to open, along with the new Evenant platform. So last night we got a lot of traffic and the third-party servers couldn't really handle it, but we're working very hard on making sure you guys can get into the new platform, the courses, and just hang out there in the groups. We got a lot of awesome comments so far from people, and they really love it, so we want to get all of you in there. But meanwhile, here's a quick little lecture on light and shadow. I hope it helps out. There's so much more in there for beginners and intermediate artists, but this is at least something. Try following along with me and hopefully you can learn something cool. And I'll let you know as soon as we open right back up. So thanks artists, and as always, stay creative. Light and shadow. Alright guys, so let's look at this subject here. And I'm not going to go too deep into this. It's something that you learn as you progress as an artist and you do, more studies and you understand more about how light works and how to add your shadows and all that stuff. So I'm just going to cover the basics today. And I guess we can just start by saying that, try to be simple as well with this. With everything I'm trying to teach you in this course, it's all about being simple and not overcomplicating things because this can get quite complicated. But let's just say that you want to start with... So you want to start with only a couple values here. So light and shadow is all about values. Start with values. And then you blend these together. Okay, so you don't want to go in and start thinking about all the different kinds of, bounce lights and highlights and main lights and transition and all that stuff. You just want to kind of simplify everything. So what we can do is we can start with just making a little sphere here, just to illustrate. So I'm just going to make a box like this. And in this, we can add a little sphere. And just make the sphere a little like that. So let's say the light is coming from here. Okay, so here's our light source. Now, the first thing we're going to get is just a couple of shadows here. And if we press lock transparent pixels and take a soft brush, now I'm just going to add just an overall little shadow here. Okay, I'm just going to color pick from it and just kind of add that in there. Nothing too crazy. All right, so we're already starting to see some form here. Now, there's a couple of different types of shadows and different types of lights. Now, another thing, let's say this thing is on a table. So we're gonna get let's use this one. All right, so we're gonna get a cast shadow. Let's take it up more. So I'm just gonna use this guy again, and we're gonna get a cast shadow from the light here. I'm just gonna put it a little bit under there. So a good way to see, cast shadow is that it comes from, like you can follow the lines, kind of like that, and then it will sort of show you where or how big the cast shadow is. But you can eye this as well. It doesn't really matter too much. We're just trying to be simple here. So the cast shadow will be kind of dark. I can just actually make a new layer. Something like that. And we can even erase a little bit as it goes away, because these won't be so super, hard edges when it comes to going outside here. So there's the umbra and penumbra and all that, kind of complicated shadow stuff. But I think this is good enough. So let's just write some of these down and what they are, and then we can look at an example like than just a sphere on how we can start doing all this. Let's go up here. So this is called the cast shadow. Now, this part here that you see, that's going to be the main light, like the main sort of or the main light of the scene. So let's just put that there. Then we can also add a little bit of a highlight. So I'm just going to use a soft brush and go back to the sphere and just pick white. And you see like this light source is right there, so the highlight will be somewhere around there. Okay. You can just add a little bit in there. Just blend it in a little bit. So depending on the texture of the sphere, it can be like super glossy, and then we can add a super reflective highlight there. It really reflects the sun or something. Or we can just make it a little bit more diffuse and do something like this. Still kind of glossy, but nothing too much. All right, so that's our this is our highlight. Now, another thing that's going to happen is that the light is coming from here and it's bouncing around everywhere, so it's coming back here, and this is lighting up and it's bouncing back into the ball itself. And what's going to happen is that we're going to get some more lighting under here, and that's actually called bounce light. So sometimes the bounce light is like super strong. It can even be as bright as the main light, and it usually is like the color of whatever is under here. So let's just add in a little bit. Let's just use values now, and I'm gonna lower the opacity a little bit, and we're gonna add some of that. Oh, let's see, wrong layer. Let's go back here. Just add a little bit of a bounce light coming in here, maybe even from the back here. So you see how this ball here is starting to come to shape. It's really starting to look more realistic. And that's because it's kind of like just reflecting, and things are sort of coming into it. And then here is going to be some kind of area where it's mainly like just as little light as possible, I guess, on the actual ball. But let's just write this down first. So we have bouncing in there. So this is the bounce light, and this is very important to do. Like many beginner artists, they don't do this bounce light, and so a lot of their objects, they don't really look that very realistic or good. So, all right, and then we also have the core shadow, right? So the core shadow will be somewhere kind of around here, as it sort of transitions from all of these different types of shadows. Just follow the form a little bit more and from where the light is coming from. All right, so this is the core shadow. Now, sorry if this is a little bit boring and, stale, but it's important that we look at this. All right, that's the core shadow. And then we have something called ambient occlusion. You might have seen that if you have done any 3D rendering. So the ambient occlusion is where, all this light, like this bounce light and the main light and stuff like that, all that's scattering everywhere. And so what happens is that there will be some parts of your scenes and of your objects that where light isn't, present. And that's where you have the ambient occlusion, right? So that just means that the ambience is occluded, it's gone. And so that will usually be like right under here. So this will be kind of dark. And we don't have to do too much, but this will just add a little bit of that ambient occlusion there. And then we can also go back to this and make the shadow part here more dark. Because usually the shadow, the cast shadow is going to be darker than the object itself, but something like that. All right, so that's kind of the ambient occlusion there. Now, there's just some more things, but this is pretty much enough. Like knowing this sort of, values, how to use these values, how to use these different lights and shadows, you can do so much, right? And it's just only using a few values and then blending them together. So, we can start blending this guy together a little bit. So the core shadow kind of blends into, let's just lower the opacity a bit. It blends into the rest of the sphere. And the bounce light as well. Layer. And then maybe even like this shadow itself is actually a sort of like an ambient there. So we can just add that a little bit in there, like that. All right. So that's pretty much the basics of this. And you can take this, to such depths, you can really understand this a lot more. But I think this is enough. Also, maybe we could just make this, you can even go up here to filter, maybe do a little bit of a Gaussian blur there. Oh, it's in black transparent pixels. There we go. Just a little bit like that. Okay, so now that we have just gone through that a little bit, you can just put this aside. Now let's say you have a scene here. So let's do another. Oh, let's do another little scene. Actually, let's just make a little sky here. Something like that, and then let's just make a little beach or something. Let's use the lasso. So I'm not really doing much of a lighting here, but let's say the light is coming from up here. Let's say the sun is kind of high up here. So there's going to be a little bit, more light on the top here, and then we can just push that a little bit. So that's kind of the main light here. and just some texture like that. And we can add a little bit of extra light on the edges. Just a little bit of highlight. And there's also one more lighting that I didn't really add here, and that's called rim light. And that's really where, you have the light a little bit behind the object, and then you're going to get some sort of like rim light around it. And we can do that here, but let's say that let's do a little C. Just something simple like this. Now let's add a little rock here. So make a new layer there. And we can make it kind of gray, dull, a little bit dull like that. And so now we just want to make like a form for this little rock, or maybe a big rock. Just sort of sketching out the main form of this. And so we can kind of see where the faces of the rock is turned. All right. Oops. Where's that guy? There he is. Okay, so we said that the light was coming from here, right? And so the first thing, can lock this guy. Can just start adding a little bit more main light to this face. Just to get us started here. All right, so that's the sort of main form we can kind of see now. Now you see, like, if we just follow this, what we talked about before. So we have the main light, and that's kind of what we're doing now. And then we're gonna get some bounce light, right? So that's kind of the main two things. And this sand here is actually gonna lighten up this guy a little bit. And so what we can add is just a little bit of that color right there. It doesn't have to be much. Just a little bit of that sand bouncing up into the rock itself. Okay, same sort of hue. And this main light, all this bounce light and main light to work together. And so when the light, casts its light and its color, it's going to lighten up some of that dark area too, because the sun here is kind of strong. And so what you're going to get is a little bit of this blue. Like I'm just color picking from the sky itself, and just adding in a little bit of blue. It will just make it pop in, or blend in so much better into the scene. And you can even add some of that blue to to the sand itself, especially the shadow parts. So let's make this a little bit wider. And let's say we get a little bit of a shadow going on here. This cast shadow, right? So you can just take the same color here, just darken it down a bit, or quite a lot, and just add some of that in there. You can even use a little bit softer brush. Now, this shadow here, as you see that it's excluded from the sun, and so what's going to light this up? Well, the sky will do that, so we can have a little bit of that blue here as well. So just a bit of that blue will really help that, blend into the scene much better. And then we're going to have some highlights. You can just pick this guy and then create a little bit of a highlight here and there. Oops. Let's use something less textury. And this also, it's similar to the rim light, where, let's say the sun is behind here or something, then, we're gonna get some super powerful rim light, and that's gonna pop this guy out. But this kind of works too, just sort of following the texture a little bit of what a rock looks like. Add a little bit of that blue here as well. And some of that bounce light. Because you think, this might be like one color because it's like a brown, but no, it's actually not. It's taking in all the colors from the surrounding itself. A little bit more form light. You can even add, okay, let's add a little bit more here from the bounce. Some texture. Decrease the opacity a bit. And then we'll have some ambient occlusion. It's going to be quite dark, right where there's very little light. And that can be cracks and, all kinds of stuff. Now, if this rock was wet, it would be even more clear, all these blues and all that stuff. All right, so I hope this makes sense for you. How I like to think about light and how to light up scenes and stuff. And it's just using these, main sort of, aspects of light. We don't have to take it too far. Just, do a couple of values, the main light, and then add some core shadow. Start working with your colors, add your cast shadow, and important to remember that there's bounce light as well. Like light is going all around this place. So that's what I wanted to share with you about light and shadow. And of course, you can learn a lot more as you just study references and maybe look at a scene that has a rock in something like this. Right now I didn't use any reference because I've done this quite a lot, but it's something that you will just learn more as you go. All right, guys. So I'll see you in the next lecture.